Hey guys, what's going on? It's Codiak here, back for another video, and today we are talking about legendaries by the numbers. Now, I know we covered legendaries already in a previous video, but I saw a really neat poll on Reddit a couple weeks ago that I thought was relevant. I thought it gives a great picture, a great snapshot, if you will, of the situation around legendaries. Now, Emerald Nightmare has been out for a few weeks. We're heading towards 7.1, but legendaries is still that hot ticket item, that hot button issue that everybody is talking about. Everybody is wondering when the next one will drop, when the one they want will drop. So let's take a look at this poll. 6,528 responses, a decent sample size, but in the large scheme of things, not that many players, but a decent enough sample size to get a kind of snapshot of the situation. So the first question is, how long have you been playing World of Warcraft? And this is a really interesting question because, as you can tell by the poll, 5 years or more, 5,015 players, 76.8% of the players that responded to this poll have been playing for a long time. And that really is a general idea about World of Warcraft, the way that World of Warcraft has retained its veteran audience. Now, there is a decent portion, 9.5%, that have been playing for 3 to 5 years, 573 people, 8.8% playing for 1 to 3 years, and a decent chunk at 5%, 319 players that have been playing for less than a year. So decent numbers, keeping the game growing, doing what they can to bring in new players and keep them around. So really interesting numbers there. The next question is, how many active 110 characters do you have? And this is a whole nother issue altogether. If you'll notice, the largest chunk here is 3,170 responses. 48.6% of the player base only has one level 110 character. Now, if we were talking about Warlords of Draenor, we would have been talking about 4, 5, 6 characters, because you could just park them in your garrison, do what you gotta do. You wouldn't really have to work on them. You just kind of gain some of the benefits from having a ton of followers and all of that. The game has changed. Legion has changed, and everything is different. So a decent chunk of the players only have one level 110 character, and they probably will. Now, you'll see that number grow as the expansion goes on, obviously. Content runs out, things like that. But one level 110 character, so we're talking about 48.6%. Now, there is a decent chunk, 34.1%, that has 2 level 110 characters, and a very small size, 17.4%, 1,134 players that have 3 or more. So overall, it's a 50-50 split between 1 and 2 and more than 3. So pretty interesting numbers there. This has been coined as the alt killer expansion, but is that really true? I think you'll see that number go up quite a bit, but really doesn't have anything to do with legendaries, just a really interesting snapshot of the situation with characters in the game. Now, let's get into it. Do you have a Legion Legendary? Well, 35.6% at the time of this poll put yes, and then 64.4%, 4,207 players put no. That is a massive number. Now, Emerald Nightmare has been out for weeks and weeks and weeks. Many guilds have cleared it on Mythic, many guilds have cleared it on Heroic, and even more have cleared it on Normal. So where is the Legendary? 64.4% is a large number of the population. And as I said in the previous video, there was the expectation that we would be getting a Legendary before we entered, or within the first week of raiding. Now, that may not be true. People have seemed to disagree with me on that, and that's totally fine. I thought that the implication was that we are getting legendaries so that we can help and progress in the raid situation. Some people have said that, well, we were supposed to get it at the first tier, and the first tier is technically Nighthold. But we've seen players get the legendaries, and we've seen them get bad legendaries, good legendaries, and then most of us are sitting here not getting legendaries. Now, I will say, at the time of this video, I do finally have my first legendary. It is the terrible, terrible ring that many players seem to get. I don't know why many players seem to get it. That's a completely other issue. But yeah, there you go. So let's look at where people are getting these legendaries. 28.8%, 668 players are getting them from emissary caches. Mythic Dungeons here, 308 players, 13.3%. Mythic Plus Dungeons, 25.7%. And then a little bit of a raid snapshot here. We've got 1.8% on LFR, 10.2% on normal, 6.8% on heroic, and 0.9% on mythic. So you really have to look at the raid as a kind of whole snapshot picture. There obviously were a lot of people doing normal at the time of this poll, a little bit doing heroic, obviously not very many doing LFR and mythic at the time. But the thing you'll notice about this spread here, guys, is that it's all very highly repetitive content. Now, you can go out and kill rare mobs and things like that, world bosses, all of that good stuff, but that has its limitations. You're talking about Mythic Dungeons, Mythic Pluses. You can grind those out. You can continually do them and hope for those legendary drops. Emissary Cache, it's a daily thing. It happens quite a bit. And we did know that that was going to be a very high percentage of the drop chance was going to be in those Emissary Caches. So that's really cool. Pretty accurate to what they said was going to happen with the legendary drop situation, where you're going to get them. Now, an interesting note about this, we started a normal run on Arthas. Now, we've gathered a few of the different Arthas guilds together and started a normal kind of coalition group together. We're going to progress into heroic, things like that. One of the bosses in Emerald Nightmare that keeps dropping legendaries, I think it's 2 or 3 weeks in a row now, was Ursoc. So a really interesting note there, because there have already been some issues with the legendary system. There was an issue with players getting their second legendary much quicker than they got their first, and that was a bug in the system that was addressed, but does not seem to have been accurately addressed. And we'll talk about that in a second here. But some really interesting caveats to the where Legion Legendaries are dropping, how they drop, and kind of the intricacies behind all of them. Now, no surprise here, what Emissary Cache did you get your legendary from? A pretty fair spread with, let's see, the High Mountain Tribe, Court of Ferondis, a little higher than factions like Valarjar, and what else we got? Dreamweavers, for instance. So a little bit of a skew there, but overall pretty even. That's kind of what you would expect from something like that. It has nothing to do with the faction itself, everything to do with the content in which you're getting that legendary. And this is the next question here, and I touched on this briefly. Did you get the legendary that you would have picked? 28.2% said yes, 60.4% said no, and 11.4% said no, I got Safuza's Secret. I'm going to unsub and uninstall right now. And I am definitely in that group. I got the Safuza's Secret. It is what it is. It's fun in dungeons, things like that. Helps you kill trash and all that good stuff. But it's very, very niche in raid. It's a stat stick. It's basically dead weight. Can't wait to get rid of it. But who knows when I will, because in 7.1 there is going to be a way to increase the item level of your legendaries. So I guess we will see. But the number to really focus on here is the 60.4% of players that did not get the legendary they would have picked. And look, that is a completely random chance. There is no pressure on Blizz to make sure that we each get the legendary we want right off the bat. That's random. There's nothing we can do about that. And overall, guys, there's nothing we can do about the legendary situation. We can bitch and moan all we want. It is what it is. It's going to happen the way it is. But still, 60.4% is a big number. And that's what I want to focus on there. So what about the secondary stats? Were the secondary stats what you wanted for the spec and roll you actually needed? Now, I want you to take this with a grain of salt. 59.5% players said yes, 40.5% said no. And if you remember in some of my comments in the last video, I said make sure your loot specification is set accurately to the class that you, or the spec that you want the legendary on. Now, I don't know if the 40.5% of people that got the legendary didn't have the right spec on or whatever. I don't know, because I'm not them. I'm not 940 players. But I will say that if you're in the loot spec that you want, there's a good chance that you are going to get the secondary stats that you want, because Blizz knows the secondary stats that you want. And they wouldn't tune legendary items to specific specs poorly. I'm sure there's a few outliers there that are, and I don't know all the legendaries off the top of my head, but take that with a grain of salt. Make sure your loot spec is set accurately, even if you're going through a boss, right? Say you're going through Emerald Nightmare. You don't really need anything off of Ursoc, I'll say, since we just talked about him. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to switch my loot spec to my off spec. You know, as soon as you do that, you're going to get a legendary. And now you're going to be stuck with a legendary for your off spec, and you're going to hate your life. That's just the way it is, guys. That's the way this game works. It is a fickle, fickle mistress. You guys have to be careful about that. So, what do you think about the way legendary items are acquired now? 19.3% said I love it. 56.1% says meh, whatever, and 24.6% says I hate it. And I'm really in that meh, whatever. I like talking about him. I like sharing my thoughts with you guys and hearing what you have to say about it, because it is a hot button issue. But at the end of the day, you really can't do anything about it. We can't call Blizz up and say, look, you need to fix this right now or I'm leaving. They're not going to do that. They do their best to listen to the community, but they can only do so much. So 56.1%, a decent chunk of this poll's population said, I don't really care. It is what it is, and that's that. So there you go. Now, do you have 2 or more Legion Legendary items? We have 81% saying no and 19% saying yes. And this is kind of what I touched upon before. There was an issue with the second legendary dropping much quicker after you got your first legendary. Now, it was addressed and was noted as fixed, but we still see players that get that second legendary very, very quickly. And it's hard to tell if they just have good luck or if there really is something broken in the game that needs to be addressed. It is an interesting situation because this poll reflects that the issue is kind of fixed, right? 19% of the poll's population that has a legendary has already gotten their second one. So it's an interesting number because that's pretty small, but 20% is still pretty large in the grand scheme of things. And who knows, that could have been pre-fix, post-fix. There's a lot of question marks surrounding the legendary system, and that's kind of what I wanted to get out to you guys right now. 6,528 people responded to this poll talking about Legion Legendaries. A lot of good information, but take it all with a grain of salt. You will get your legendary. We will get to the next couple raids here with Trials of Valor and the Nighthold. We will hopefully have legendaries that we want. Work to make sure that you're getting that 15,000 order resources to upgrade so that you can get your second legendary when the time comes. But some really cool information, guys. I still want to know what you think. I know we've had a lot of good discussion on the previous video, but I still want to know what you think. How do you feel about the legendary system? Have you gotten your first legendary? What legendary did you get? Are you part of the Safuza's Secret Club? What do you guys think? How is Legion going? How is the Legion Legendary system working for you? If you are new to the channel, please feel free to like the video and subscribe. We love interacting with you guys. We've seen this channel take off, and we are so excited that you are part of it with us. This is all about the community. This is all about the game that we love to play together as a team, as an extended community, and we love it. Every second of it. So for now, guys, this is the end of the video. My name is Codiak, raid leader for Exiled Power. Check out our website, exiledpower.com. Feel free to keep in touch with us in-game or online. We'll see you next time. Take care.